Welcome to our webinar today, Overcoming Virtual Fatigue with Customer Experience Consultant Jess Pischel. My name is Nicole Paul and I am Chief Experience Officer for the DiJulius Group. And before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few things with you to make sure you have a great experience today. So, for those who are familiar with Zoom, this is a Zoom webinar. Now, if you are not so familiar with the differences between a Zoom webinar and a Zoom meeting, in a Zoom meeting, we're the Brady Bunch. You can see and hear everyone. You can send people into breakout sessions. Zoom webinars are just a little different. They're designed for larger groups and more directed messages. But what's really cool is you can still chat with each other. There's a Q&A feature that's not available on Zoom meetings. We can also do polls and all sorts of fun things like that. So today, if you have any great takeaways, want to engage with the other attendees, any tech issues, go ahead and use the chat feature. You can hover over your screen and at the bottom hit the chat. You can either chat to all attendees or you can chat to myself directly as a panelist if you want to send a private message. So if anything comes up, as you hear any great takeaways that Jess has to share, please, we want to hear your favorites in the chat. Jess is going to present some content for you today, and then we're also going to open it up and have some time for Q&A. She'll also answer some of those questions as we go. So as questions pop up, same thing with the chat, hover over, you're going to see a Q&A box. In the Q&A box, you can enter your question. What's really cool about the Q&A feature, if you haven't used Zoom webinar before, is you can upvote the question. So if you see someone ask a question, you're going to see a little thumbs up button under the question, and you can hit that if you have the same question so that we can prioritize which of those we're going to answer. So questions for Jess, go ahead and throw in the Q&A section, and any takeaways or tech issues, or if you need to get in touch with me directly, throw those in the chat. We are recording this webinar. We know that there's going to be some great takeaways, some things you might want to share with your team. So you will receive a link with the recording by end of day tomorrow at the latest, as well as a copy of Jess's slides if you want to reference back to anything that she mentions. Now, real quick before we get started, I want to launch a poll. So because we are going to be talking very much about Zoom. Now, that's just because the DiJulius Group has tried lots of different platforms and that has worked best for us and for many of our clients. But we know there are lots of different options out there like GoToMeeting, Microsoft Teams, etc. So I'm going to launch a poll for you guys and take a second, and there's multiple choice. I want to hear what platforms you use the most, especially in business. So check one or more that you guys tend to use. And I'd love to hear in the chat, I'm seeing lots of people hit others. So in the chat, I'd love to hear what platforms there are. Many of you are going to realize there are a lot of different platforms. They all have very similar features. They all have different price points. And a lot of my research throughout 2020 has been there is no one perfect platform for everyone. And that goes for both internal meetings, workshops that Jess is facilitating, or those who attended the customer service revolution. Multiple platforms made that happen. So even with events, it's a lot of trial and error and research and finding what works best for you. So, all right, last chance to get those poll answers in here. All right. So overwhelmingly, we have about 64% of people are using Zoom, which is awesome. Not a lot of people using FaceTime. And as you all know, it's probably because you're limited, right? It's just that face-to-face conversation. So those who hit other platforms, please let me know in chat. I would love to hear what you're using. We always love checking out new tools. Oh, I just realized I wasn't sharing the results. Sorry, guys. All right, so GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, another big one. Microsoft Teams is a big one. Awesome. Jane, so the customer service revolution, lots of different tools went into that. So we worked with an AV company for the production. All of our live shots were done through Zoom, but then streamed through Vimeo's live stream. And then all of that came together with Socio, which was our event app. So when you're talking about conferences, things like that, sometimes it's finding a variety of tools that work together. So awesome. All right, guys. Well, I don't want to hold you up on this beautiful day. So please welcome our customer experience consultant, Jess Pischel, as she lets you know how you can overcome virtual fatigue.
Thanks, Nicole. And I am so happy that I get to do this webinar with Nicole as my co-host because we are both the self-proclaimed Zoom experts at the DiJulius group. When anyone has a question, they always go to one of the two of us to get those questions answered. So I trust that, Nicole, you will stop me when you see a question come in, and you and I can tag team them to get everyone's questions answered. So throughout the past, okay, thanks. So throughout the past couple of months, comments of Zoom fatigue or virtual fatigue have been mentioned in my client Zoom meetings, on social media, with coworkers, in conversation with family and friends. Like my Nana is using Zoom now. She learned how to use the platform. And at the DiJulius group, we're really no exception to that. We've had to pivot and shift gears to providing virtual workshops. And in a perfect world, we prefer the workshop to be done in person because we know that the connection that's established between the consultant and the participants and attendees is just a great experience for everyone. So we struggled with how do we create a great experience for everyone virtually as well, because we know that we are no longer just dialing into one or two virtual meetings every day, but all of our meetings are virtual. And I used to get really excited, about traveling and shopping and attending my favorite workout classes. But now the most exciting part of my day is when a Zoom update pops into my inbox, and it's time to install those. So I want to cover some of the best practices that we use at the DiJulius group, and hopefully you can take away some of these and implement them so that you can have great virtual meetings. I'm also hearing from my clients that at the beginning of COVID, they felt their people were extremely productive. And a little bit of that probably had to do with the fear of potentially getting laid off or losing their job because of the way the market is and was. Now I find that some of my clients has become socially acceptable to let the dog out or to be a fourth grade teacher to your kids who you're homeschooling now because of the current circumstances. So I just want to bridge that gap, right? I think some of our people originally were extremely productive, and now we've gotten a little bit laxed on that, is what I'm hearing from my clients. So I'm going to share with you some tools to re-engage them, to get those employee net promoter scores back up, to get our team members more engaged in this virtual world. Because we know that Zoom, the Zoom lifestyle, or any platform you're using, I saw Microsoft Teams in there as well, but we're missing the collaboration that we once had. So we're no longer having those daily Keurig combos or those conversations in the break room, or we're not just able to, hey, look over to their cubicle and say, have you had this experience before? How did you respond to the client? Some of those things that we used to be able to do face to face just aren't happening anymore. And we lost that ability to connect and have a conversation that potentially leads us down a path to new brilliant ideas, which is one of the great outcomes of the virtual workshops. It's an opportunity to collaborate with each other virtually and solve some of these issues that may exist now. So number two, lack of productivity. Like I said, we've become extremely distracted or even bored working from home. I'm hearing that from a lot of my clients that I'm working with. Every meeting on the calendar has become just another virtual meeting. It's like we can't run from them, we can't hide from them, and we're just guilty of going through the motions in those meetings. And we've become Zoom zombies. We all are guilty of that one. And finally, lack of attention. So we aren't able to focus like we once were. We are getting distracted by social media or our work from home environment. The dog needs let out, an Amazon package arrives, our DoorDash lunch order is here, or we've become a full-time homeschooling teacher, which we did not sign up for that. And we aren't able to focus like we once were. And people can tell when you're not engaged, especially on Zoom. So the first piece of advice that I have for you all conducting your own workshops or meetings in the virtual world is to be clear. Be clear with what type of meeting it's going to be. And Nicole, I'll have you chime in here from the Zoom world as far as meetings versus webinars.
Absolutely. So really the two big differences are that difference between seeing and hearing everybody and not being able to see and hear everybody. So typically if you have a group of more than 30 or 40, it might be a good idea to go to a webinar format, or anything that isn't necessarily as collaborative. That's a good time to use webinar as well. Webinar has some great features like registration. So if you need to get a list of who attended, who did not, that's a good time to use webinar as well. But there are some features that you can't use. So for instance, Jess is going to be talking about breakout rooms, which are really cool, but unfortunately, that's not available in Zoom webinar. It is also an additional license. So if you have a paid Zoom account, the webinar is an add-on feature. So, pros and cons to each, and that's where you just have to see what is best for your format, for whoever's joining that meeting. Setting them up, though, is just as easy as the meetings are. But if you have any questions about utilizing those or the differences, please shoot me an email, shoot me a note in chat, and I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, so if any of you are planning a meeting or virtual workshop, we can definitely help assist you in how to navigate that. So yeah, direct all of your questions to that Q&A button, or the chat, and we can talk through some of those examples that you may have. So be clear with your attendees. What type of meeting is it? Like Nicole said, is it a webinar or is it a meeting? Are you going to be the host? Are you going to have a co-host? It's always great your first couple times to have that co-host. So if there's any IT issues, if someone gets kicked out of the meeting for whatever reason, their Wi-Fi drops, you as the presenter can focus on your content, and you can have someone helping you if you assign them as co-host to let people back in the session or to deal with any Wi-Fi or tech issues. Because what would a Zoom virtual meeting be without at least one tech issue or hiccup for someone on the session? So it's always great to have someone helping you if that opportunity allows. Make sure you establish your breaks. Tell people when you plan on breaking so they're not sitting there wondering, thinking, oh, I got to grab something to eat. I need to refill my water bottle. I need to use the restroom. So make sure you be clear on when you are planning on having your breaks so that people can plan for them. If they know they need to let their dog out and you're breaking at the top or bottom of the hour, they'll stay engaged with you until then, and then mute their microphone and pause their camera so that they can do that rather than doing it in an engaging session. I want to talk about views, the way people are viewing your screen so that they get the most out of the content that you're presenting. So I have some screen grabs in just a few slides of what those views can look like, and I'm super excited to share those with you. And then establishing the expectations as far as what is everyone's comfort level with Zoom? Is it okay to put yourself on mute when you're not talking? Is that a standard that you want to set? Or is it okay to go off camera when you're eating, or anything like that? Establish your expectations so that people aren't questioning them. So I always start with some Zoom etiquette. And the reason I start with this slide is so I know that everyone's on the level playing field. And also so that they know how to reach me and get a hold of me, because I'm focused on the slides that I'm delivering, or launching the breakout rooms or launching the polls. And so I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to get a hold of me and stop me and pause me if they have any questions. So I always ask them to go in, and this is a feature of Zoom meetings. I don't believe it's a feature of Zoom webinars. So they have the opportunity of, yeah.
You can raise your hand in a Zoom webinar, but that's it. So those familiar, you can't do any of the other fun ones.
Okay. And so it's in the participant window. Is that correct, Nicole?
That's correct.
Okay. Yep, there we go. Yale raising hands. I see a couple of other individuals raising their hands. So that's great. Yeah. So you can definitely get a hold of me in that platform, right? I see that. I have it on my screen right now, not the screen that you're viewing. So I want to make sure everyone knows how to raise their hand and get my attention. Then I usually launch a poll of, are you working at home or are you working in the office? So I can understand what the distractions are going to be throughout the duration of my workshop. I also want the attendees to be able to request a break. If I've been going too long, I can't necessarily see everyone's body language like I could in a in-person workshop. So I want people to feel comfortable and able to request a break from me when they need one. And so that can be done in the participant feature on Zoom as well. And I find that when I ask my attendees to do some of these things, not everyone knows how to do all of these things or where to find these buttons on their screen. So this is a great opportunity to engage the attendees by saying, hey, Jane, I see you raised your hand. Why don't you unmute yourself and tell Alex how that was done? And so it allows a pace element change where it's not just me talking at everyone, but it allows the team members who are on the Zoom to be able to present and share how they found that information. I like to make sure they know how to use the chat feature and how to find it. So I ask people to tell me what you had for breakfast using the chat feature. And there's always one individual that says coffee, just coffee. So I know that we're going to need breaks if someone just had coffee for breakfast. So I like to acknowledge that. I also, excuse me, like to confirm that they know how to use their emojis. And this is another interactive, engaging piece where if I say something and it's absolutely brilliant and they're able to like it or clap if they agree, or if one of the attendees says something that they definitely agree with or want to acknowledge, there's an opportunity to use that emoji for feedback. And I love that. And then finally, I ask them, are you ready to begin? And there's a yes button or a no button in the participant, and I get all yeses here. So that's another good way to engage them. You just want to make sure people are super comfortable with getting in touch with you while you're presenting, because you are multitasking as a Zoom host or presenter. Okay, so the view options. I want to share with you how some of these view options could look. And then I want to tell you my favorite feature of those options. So this is the standard view, and it's just a panel of attendees at the top. You could see our coworkers there, John, Dave, and that is Denise logged into Lindsay's account. But then you can see the slides big. Here's another Zoom option in the view that actually is my preferred. And I also recommend the attendees that are in my meeting to view the screen the same way, just to make sure it's engaging as it possibly can be. So the more people that you can see, the better for me. I feel like that's when people are engaged and are able to see people's reactions to certain content. So this is the side-by-side gallery view. And so if you click on that view options in the top of the screen, it'll give you that option for side-by-side gallery view. And then you're able to move the pane on that screen. So if you see on the left-hand side, I have my coworkers up and down, but if I want to make the slide smaller because we're engaging in a topic of conversation, I don't necessarily need to see every single bullet on that busy slide right now. I can make that slide smaller and my team members bigger. So I really love that feature, and I found that when I'm conducting my workshops, a lot of people don't know that that one exists, and it's my favorite to use, again, from the engagement standpoint.
And Jess, I just let them know that is something that is doable on both webinars and meetings. So that is something that you guys can play with right now. And some, depending on your platform, like when I tap on view, it pulls everything down. You might need to do a right click. And I will let everyone know that if you are on iPhone or iPad or any tablet, the view options are not as customizable, unfortunately. So if you're in for a long workshop, definitely recommend that everyone join on their desktop.
Yeah, and via meeting. I find that unless you're doing a situation like we are right now, where I'm delivering content to you, then meeting is probably the better way to go. And these are features of the Zoom meeting that I'm referencing right now. All right, so I want to share with you some of our best practices for icebreakers. Icebreakers are one of my favorite parts of the workshop because you get to know the attendees in a really quick time frame. And so Nicole and I were struggling with how do we make people feel engaged like they are there. We aren't there in person with them. So we had to be kind of creative on some of the icebreakers that we use. And this one was one of my favorites. So and when I say we, I mean Nicole and Lindsay put together these amazing boxes that had a ton of content in them for our Customer Experience Executive Academy team members, because we had to pivot to virtual workshops this year. So what we did was we sent them a box with a bunch of cool Cleveland swag CS Rev pieces, and we had them open the delivery on as an icebreaker in the first couple moments. And so it created and built up that anticipation, because they received the box on Monday, but they couldn't open it until we were all live together on Tuesday. So it was just an opportunity to engage them, make them feel special. So I want to challenge you. Can you, maybe it's not a gift box, you can't do that for every meeting, but can you surprise them and send a handwritten note prior to the meeting or event, just to create and generate that excitement? And of course, we used our Secret Service and our Forward information to personalize these gifts. Another good one, Zoom bingo. So I'll have my attendees of a long workshop create their bingo card on a scrap piece of paper in the first 30 seconds of our time together virtually. And I share this example on the screen. But I let them have some free spaces and add in their own information. So anytime someone's doorbell rings or a dog barks or I eat a snack, because I created this when I was pregnant, so I was eating a lot of snacks. Anytime someone says that, can you see my screen? Or sorry, go ahead, and people are kind of talking over each other, you would put a space on your bingo card. And then no matter who is talking throughout the entire duration of the workshop, if you hit bingo, you have to unmute yourself and yell bingo as loud as you can at home. So this was a fun thing for our team members, our participants to do, kept them engaged. And what they would put in their free spaces was really funny. So it's just a good way to keep people engaged. Here is another icebreaker that you can do, and it is called Trivia Head or Shoulders. So I put every attendee in gallery view, and I ask them to do the same so that you can see everyone in that Brady Bunch style format. And I, as the host, will ask trivia questions. And if you think the answer is A, you put your hand on your head. If you think the answer is B, you put your hand on your shoulders. So I cannot see you all right now, but I know you're participating. So let's do a trivia example question. So who was Justin Timberlake a part of? Was it NSYNC or Backstreet Boys? NSYNC or Backstreet Boys? All right, so Nicole's got it. It was NSYNC. So if you don't get the answer right, you turn off your camera. So you are eliminated. And you keep going through the series of questions, A or B options, and have people see if they can answer them. And you get harder as the questions go on. So this is a great way to keep people engaged, to laugh at yourself when you don't know the answer to how many elements are on the periodic table of elements, or just some tricky questions that you didn't think people would know the answer to. This is a fun one. So the last person that has their camera on obviously wins the game here. And maybe you give them a prize for doing that. Just keep it fun and light. That's what people are craving right now. So this was a Pictionary. And you can annotate on the screen and draw on the screen, or if you want to keep it even more simple, you can have someone with a whiteboard. So for instance, I would have a whiteboard right here and I would be drawing these things, have team 1 and team 2, and see if people who could answer my Pictionary. So screen grab this one and use this one. This one's fun. It always gets a lot of engagement and feedback here.
And Jess, how about people can utilize the Zoom whiteboards to do this as well, right? You just have to have a level of trust to make sure that anyone who has control, you trust that they will not take advantage of their drawing abilities.
Okay. This one requires a little bit of pre-work for you as the meeting host, but I trust that everyone on this webinar right now is familiar with the acronym FORWARD that we use at the DiJulius group. So if you're not, I'll run through it quickly. It stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And we say when you know someone's forward, you know them on a more personal level, you are able to build and establish rapport and connection. And so this is an acronym that we recommend our clients use for that relationship building tool. So prior to the meeting, what you would do is send all of the participants an email or a text message and just ask them to share with you one or two unique, interesting, fun, true facts about themselves that others may not know. And then the facilitator, which will be you, can mix up the order and read each of one of these fun facts to the group and see if people can guess who that fun fact belongs to. So you can do this as a polling feature. You can also have people put in the chat who they think that particular fun fact belongs to. And all throughout this, you are learning people's Secret Service and forward information. So it's an opportunity to connect with each other and to build a better relationship. All right, this one is the most interesting app on your phone. Have each participant share their app with the rest of the group. And this can be done verbally if you have a smaller team, or if it's a larger group, you can just have them put it in the chat and call on people to present what that app is or does. And make sure someone's tracking the responses here, because it's fun to send that list of essential apps to the entire team, because there's always something to be learned here. There's always an app that I'm not using that one of my participants brings up, and I end up downloading the app after our workshop together. So you can do this activity also with favorite books, favorite recipes, favorite movies, and more. The list goes on here. You're just getting to know people more. So this is a great icebreaker to do that. Now, when we used to be in person, this was one of my favorite icebreakers to do. And so I'll explain what it looks like in person, because I hope that day will come and we'll be back together, hopefully sooner than later. But what this icebreaker looks like is, if I were to start the icebreaker, I would say, my name is Jess, and an interesting fact about myself. And so I would say, my name is Jess and I have a golden doodle. Well, anyone else who has a golden doodle would have to rush up to the front of the room and connect or link arms with me, like you're seeing on the screen right now. So this is one of my favorite icebreakers, because you really get to know a lot about people. And so there's a couple rules here, or guidelines. You can't have any repeats. So if I say I have a golden doodle, 5 people down the chain can't say I have a golden doodle. So you have to be creative and come up with something new, which also urges people to get up in the front of the room quicker, because it's becomes harder at the end to not repeat anything. And you also cannot say I am an employee of XYZ company, because we would all be employees of XYZ company. So it has to be an interesting fact that is special to you. And so this is one of my favorite icebreakers. I wanted to see if we can recreate that in a virtual setting, and you can. So you, as the meeting host, and Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong here, or chime in if I didn't cover it completely, but you as the meeting host have the ability to rearrange the gallery view. So for instance, you see all your attendees in the gallery view format. You can move people in that gallery view. So the person that connects with me on the golden doodle, I would move them up to the connection of me. So they would be right next to me in the Zoom window, and then it would be their turn. So Nicole would say, what would be an interesting fact about you, Nicole, that you would say?
I have a Peloton.
Okay, so anyone who has a Peloton would race to the front of the room in an in-person workshop, or raise their hand in a virtual workshop, and then whoever does it first, I would move their picture right up next to Nicole.
And
so it's a good opportunity.
One thing, Jess, on that is, do make sure your Zoom is most up to date, because that is a very new feature. It is only in meetings, and you have to force that view on your attendees. So when you move people around as the host, you would say force the view. And Jess, I think something we've tried with that too that's interesting is like leaving your video off until you join the room, right? Because then you can see who has already linked and who has not. So then the pictures are just showing who's linked already, and it grows and grows and grows until you have your whole group.
Yeah, awesome. And then I am going to share with you one of my newer best practices if you have a series of meetings coming up. So say you have a series of meetings that you're conducting your workshop every Monday in November from 3 to 5 o'clock. At the end of each day, set the tone for what the next week is going to look like in a fun way. So have them come to the next workshop wearing their favorite hat or their favorite jersey or their favorite sports team or alumni gear. And finally, another fun one here is virtual backgrounds. And you can do so many things with virtual backgrounds. Have them put their favorite TV show in their background, their favorite movie, a picture of their family or their favorite vacation spot. So the list is endless there of what you can do with those virtual backgrounds and how to get people engaged. So if I see Hilton Head on the back of someone's attendee virtual background, I can instantly connect with them on that because I love vacationing there. So it's all about that connection in the virtual world. So I've thrown a lot at you. I want to pause and I'd love to hear your favorite icebreaker that I've said so far. So Nicole, if you wouldn't mind launching that poll.
Course. Well, so this is our managing partner Denise's pup Grace, so we can pop her in so she can join us too. So virtual backgrounds can be a lot of fun. We're Joe Exotic fans. Or Lindsay's gonna hate me for this one. You can celebrate your team members' accomplishments. We did this. Everyone did it for me. We did it for Jess. When Lindsay hit her century ride on her Peloton, when she logged on to the team meeting, we all had her. So it's just a fun way to kind of engage everybody, even though you're not in the same room together. So.
All right. Launch that poll.
All right. So favorite icebreaker. And when Jess is done, I have some pictures of that gift box to share with you guys as well, so you can see how that looks.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole.
Of course. Ooh, lots of head and shoulders.
Yeah, the head and shoulders is trivia. I know it says bingo there, but it's head and shoulders bingo. Or I'm sorry, trivia.
And my thing too, with the Guess Who game, something too is if you're hitting that point in the day where it's kind of, you know, lagging and you need that up, but you can also put some movement into that, right? So, you know, who is our skydiver, you know, take a dive off the screen, you know, and get people to move around or jump up and down or something to reveal themselves too. All right, let's see. Head and shoulders bingo, Jess.
All right, cool.
And
yeah, the trivia questions that you can ask there are fun. Okay. And I'd love to hear your other icebreakers that I missed here. If you're doing something that works really well, I would love to hear that. So please share your feedback in the chat. So this meme couldn't be more true. I feel attacked when you have that Zoom meeting, which is audio only versus with video. So I'm sure right now you all look great. I know you do, but I want to share with you a feature that Zoom offers, and it's that pretty filter. So you know when you have Snapchat or Instagram and you can filter your face, Zoom has it too. So you can go into your video settings, and from there, you will touch up your appearance. So video is selected on the left, and then you choose to mirror your video and provide that HD camera for FaceTime. And then you can always touch up your appearance or adjust for low light. So this is a fun feature that Zoom offers to play with, and I highly recommend it. All right, breakout rooms. One of the best features that Zoom offers. So when I'm consulting, whether it's in person or in Zoom, my participants always have brilliant ideas. But in the virtual world, I noticed that some people are a bit too shy to speak up, or maybe they don't want to interrupt someone else who's talking, or they don't want to voice their opinion when there's 30 plus people in the Zoom. So breakout rooms are a great way to hear those quiet voices. because they have great ideas and good things to say. So I use breakout rooms to generate ideas and content and thoughts. And then as a facilitator, you have the ability to pop in and out of those breakout rooms. So you can create the breakout rooms manually or automatically. And you'll notice that when you hit the breakout room button, you'll get an opportunity to see the options there. But you can pick who's going in breakout rooms. You can mix them up, or you can have them automatically just generate 5 people in room 1, 5 people in room 2, 5 people in room 3, and break it up that way. So what I found was that when I'm popping in and out of these breakout rooms, as a host, I have the ability to do that, and I get to hear what they've come up with. So I can hear those quiet voices, and I'll call them out when we're in general session together so that they can share their ideas. So that's one perk of being a host, being able to jump in and out of those rooms. But also, if I'm hearing a theme or a pattern in those rooms, like the same question people are asking each other over and over again, that means either I didn't explain it well enough as a facilitator, and that could happen, or it means that further discussion is warranted. So either of those situations, I have the opportunity to broadcast a message and say, hey, I'm hearing this question, here's the answer. Or I can broadcast a message and say, great discussion, everyone, 5 more minutes until I pull you back in a general session. So you can use it as a countdown. And I can also clarify any misunderstandings there. So I broadcast to tell people how much time remains before they come back in. And then once you click bringing everyone back from their breakout rooms, they get a 60-second countdown until they either come back on their own, or they will just get pushed back to general session. And you can change that time limit too. If you go into your Zoom settings, you can change it to 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. But I find a minute is sufficient for them to close the conversation that they were having and make their way back to general session. So Camargo is a pharmaceutical consulting firm that I have had the absolute pleasure of working with the past couple of years. And they are a very successful company. They are, but they look to the DiJulius group because they never explicitly focused on or trained on client service. So most of their client-facing teams admitted that that was either out of their comfort zone or a bit of a struggle to develop relationships with their clients. These individuals are extremely intelligent. I mean, they're PhD scientists, so they are absolutely brilliant. But they admitted that they needed a little help in customer service and training on establishing rapport. And so they also tended to lean on their scientific experience and expertise when they're selling and servicing their clients. So we worked on the commandments that are bordered in red are the commandments that we did with each other in our partnership together. And some of these workshops were pre-COVID. So I was able to be on site with them in Durham and on site with them in their Cincinnati office. And then we had to shift gears and pivot to virtual life. But their results have been great. So they've been able to establish proactive scheduling for regular meetings, for example, whereas in the past they would tend to hide behind an email or wait for the client to email them first. So now they are able to own that experience and the communication patterns, and client experience is their number one priority now. So this was an outcome of the workshop because they found that they weren't able to connect with the clients like they once were, and also share those best practices internally. So this is their internal project kickoff meeting. And then they also established as part of their workshop results, a client close meeting. So it was an opportunity for them to share lessons learned in that project with that client, and really a learning opportunity for everyone. So I did virtual workshops with them and regular in-person workshops. And this is the feedback that we received from them. Pleasantly surprised on how the workshop was. 6 hours flew by. And that's something that I think everyone is a little nervous about when they're planning a virtual workshop is, can I do this? Can it be as engaging? as an in-person. And I think a lot of our clients did press the pause button because it was new and they didn't know if virtual workshops would be sufficient or if we'd get what we needed to out of them. But it can be done, and it has been done. And even had some feedback here from Camargo saying that they liked the virtual workshop over the in-person workshop. They thought it was easier. So I don't know if that means I'm just a total slave driver when I'm in person conducting these workshops or what, but people seem to really enjoy them and really like them. And I find that a lot of things may end up sticking virtual just because there's no cost associated with travel. People can work from home. And so there's just an area of opportunity there. One thing that we did ask in the workshop, and forgive me because I know this poll results is a bit blurry, but in the world-class internal culture workshop with them, it was virtual, and I asked them anonymously. This feedback from the polls is anonymous. I asked them during the world-class internal culture workshop, how do you feel you rate your internal culture at Camargo? And these participants on this workshop are all leadership level and above. And if you notice here, there are several tens. Several people responded and said, yes, we have our internal culture is the best it can be. Then I asked that same question, but from their employee perspective. And I asked, how do you think our employees rate our culture? Again, this is anonymous. And you can see that the scores here are a bit lower. And when I shared the results here that you see on the screen, the CEO, the president, even made a comment that he didn't think we would have solicited this kind of feedback if it wasn't for me launching the poll in this situation. So it's knowing when to use those polls, when to solicit that feedback, and making sure that your attendees feel like they have the ability to be honest. But maybe it's not something that they would have brought up in gallery view. If I said, how do you rate your culture? Maybe we wouldn't have gotten the 6s there.
And Jess, I do want to chime in with when you are setting up your Zoom meeting or webinar, you do need to check something on your end if you want this to be truly, truly anonymous, because as you guys could notice, you couldn't see who voted what, but the meeting host could, download that information, but there is a way to make it truly anonymous. And I think it's just that level of transparency, Jess, and, it might even take the host showing them, we are not collecting this information, or in this instance, we were the ones running the meeting. So, their leaders didn't have access to that information.
Yeah, great point. So in closing, I want to cover some virtual nevers and always that we use at the DiJulius Group, and I recommend my clients use as well. So always be present, never multitask. And that one can be hard to do. We're all guilty of multitasking, having multiple monitors going at once, sending an email while you're on Zoom, sending a text message. So as best we possibly can, we have to be present because people can tell when you're not. Take your meeting notes on your primary monitor. I was recently called out by John for not paying attention in one of our internal meetings. And it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention, because I was. It was that I was taking notes on my other monitor. So from his perspective, he couldn't tell what I was doing on my other monitor. Maybe I was on Facebook or Pinterest or one of those apps, but I wasn't. So close your apps though here. I am always jumping from monitor to monitor. Full transparency, I have my slides here and my slides that you're seeing on my other monitor so that I'm engaged with the camera. And so I'm making eye contact with you. That brings me to my next one, video camera at eye level. It would be extremely distracting if my video camera was up here and I'm looking up here or to the right or to the left. So just make sure you have it at eye level and have that main source of lighting. Never have that main source of lighting come from behind you because it can wash you out and you'll appear as a shadow. You always have to have some sort of lighting in front of you. So I have a ring light in front of me and obviously a wall behind me. So that's something that you want to be conscious of when you're in a meeting because it can be a little bit distracting for your attendees, especially if you're the host. And here's another great best practice. So mute yourself when you aren't talking. and never have that distracting background or background noise. And you can avoid most of the background noise by just making sure that you mute um, and um, and only unmute yourself when you have something to say. And then it also helps with people not talking over each other, because I know when Nicole hits her unmute button that she has something to say. So, and I can read her body language with that too. So always mute yourself when you're not talking, and never have that distracting background or noise coming in. So these are some key virtual always and nevers. You can share these with your team. Screen grab them right now if you wish. And I want to just in close say that virtual fatigue is a real thing. We're all challenged with this feat right now, keeping our employees engaged, making sure their productivity and the collaboration isn't lost in the shuffle. And so it is important now more than ever to really keep them engaged. And our world-class internal culture workshop helps do just that. You saw that the feedback from Camargo was great from a virtual workshop standpoint, and it allows everyone to really be engaged and measure those employee engagement scores so that we can improve them and keep everyone productive in this new work from home life.
Thanks, Jess. So I want to show everybody something, because this right here is typically a big no-no, right? You never want that big light behind you. I also have a little ring light in front of me, and it was $10 on Amazon. And I just want to show you guys the difference between. So you're getting everything blown out here, but as long as you have a strong enough light. So it's really important. And most people will tell you, you don't want natural light. I will be completely transparent with everyone though. It is 75 degrees in November in Cleveland. So had to take advantage of that. Please throw the questions you have for Jess in the Q&A. And I just want to really quickly, I want to go ahead and show you a little bit more on those boxes that Jess was talking about that we did for our CXEA class. So as you can see here, we wanted to make it a fun experience from the minute they got the package, right? So we had stickers everywhere, you know, don't look. And we prompted them, do not open your package. Don't spoil the surprise, because everyone's was the same. And we made a game about it, even on opening the items inside, and hyper personalizing it, right? So in this instance, it was something that was typically very highly collaborative, highly personalized in person that we weren't going to have anymore. So, you know, the messaging when they open the box, you know, you want to make every piece of it, right? It's not just opening an envelope. We had postcards that said hello from Cleveland. And we even, you know, paid attention to detail. So we have some people who are local to Cleveland who were in this workshop. So their postcard said, Cleveland is the place to be, instead of hello from Cleveland. And then we made everything inside kind of themed as well. So we would typically be feeding these people. So we had DoorDash gift cards included so that they could order lunch so that they don't have to worry about that. Everybody got the Revolution shirts, and we themed all of that. And then the Cleveland Misses You package, you know, had something very Cleveland, some Cleveland Clothing Company socks. So there's lots of fun things that you can do to still bring that experience to people. Obviously, this is something, you know, that does come with a cost, you know, but when you're looking at that, when you're looking at your P&Ls for your event, you know, just working that cost in as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Jen, she is in our CXEA class, and she said it's so tough not to open them. That's the hardest part, is the anticipation, but that's exactly what we wanted to do, was build some hype, since we weren't going to have each other together.
Yep.
So does anybody have any other questions for Jess or myself about virtual meetings, how to engage different platforms? Please feel free to ask. We'd be happy to help. And as Jess said, internal culture is so important, especially now when we're apart. And I think this is something that Jess can personally attest to, is working from home is awesome for some and a challenge for others. So, always making sure you put yourself in the shoes of your team members and your employees. All I have are my cats wandering around. They don't bother me too much. But, I know that Lindsay is typically at home trying to manage her children, help them, with schooling too. And Jess got to experience both worlds this year. All right, we have a question from Starlin. Hi, Starlin. How do you recommend getting the community to attend educational events in the evening when you are hosting over Zoom, when they are fatigued from being on Zoom all day?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you have to use some of those icebreakers. You can't just be talking at them. You have to keep them engaged. You have to keep your pace elements engaging as much as you possibly can. Get them standing up, get them out of your chair. So maybe it's, instead of head and shoulders, it's stand up, sit down trivia. So you're getting them up and off. Give them some grace too. If you think it's okay to have them go off camera for a little bit, set that expectation that, hey, I know you've been on Zoom all day. If you do need to stop your video, we understand, but please turn it on when we're doing an engaging activity. So that would be my advice. Use those icebreakers. Use the gift boxes that Nicole was talking about. Surprise and delight them as your customer, because that's essentially what they are. You're delivering content and material to them. So they are relying on you to deliver that content. So that makes them your customer internally. So that would be my piece of advice. Use some of the content that we talked about today. And I'd love to hear or help you if you have any other further questions on how that could look.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have a budget to send people things. We've seen people do happy hour kits, or if they want to stay away from drinking necessarily, it could be a shopping list. Like, here's a recipe we're going to create together, or an appetizer, to kind of make it like a happy hour of sorts. Nicole has a question. She teaches state classes and has to follow very specific rules, very specific of 50 minutes of education only. So she can't use breakout rooms or go off topic. So do you have any suggestions for engagement for her?
I think even though you are limited more than others because you have such a strict agenda, you still have to set the expectations that this isn't going to just be me talking at you the whole time, and loop in some of, maybe the trivia has to do with your state classes, like the content that you're delivering to them. So that would be a good way to do it, kind of loop in the trivia, but keep it engaging in that sense. Utilize the chat feature. I think you just said you can't use breakout rooms or stray off topic, but use the chat feature. Call on people. That's another thing. When I'm in a gallery view setting, I like to say, hey, Joe Smith, what do you think about this? And Jennifer, you're on deck. I want to hear what you think after that. So you're creating that engaging back and forth, and people are prepared. It also allows for a more smooth transition when people are prepared to unmute themselves, rather than we've all done it. We've all had it where they're talking and they're still on mute, and it's just kind of it's not as much of a smooth transition. But if they're prepared and you're preparing them to get their answer ready, they have to answer. So I think that would be another opportunity for you.
Yeah, and she did mention she utilizes the polling, which helps. And sometimes you are regulated and you have to stick to those things. But I think the biggest thing is get people moving and break the content up. Use those polls often. Give them challenges in chat. Who can be the first person to answer a piece of information you gave them? For instance, what does Ford stand for? Getting them to reiterate, because I think the biggest thing is people are just tired of staring at a screen, and not getting that back and forth. Mm-hmm. Yale has a question about Zoom webinar. It is not part of the basic fee. That is correct. So you can have an add-on. I think it starts at $40 a month for up to 100 people, and then it goes up from there depending on how many people you need to have on the webinar. You can use gallery view on it in a way. So the way Zoom webinar works is there are panelists and there are attendees. So panelists are the people that you can see, that you can hear. So right now, Jess and I are the panelists, and you guys should be able to see both of us. And if you play with your view settings right now, you'll be able to toggle between the gallery and just the speaker, just like in meetings. So it's a little bit of a yes and a no, Yale, because you would only be able to use the gallery view of the panelists, but not the attendees. But you can give attendees permission to talk. You can also promote somebody to panelists. So say someone pops on, maybe, you know, your CEO pops on and wants to address everybody, but you didn't set them up as a panelist in advance. The host can promote them so that they can be seen and heard. And, you know, we've had some sessions before where John has a webinar. We realize only 10 people are on. And so we just promoted everybody to panelists so that they can chat in kind of a round table because it was a manageable group. So I hope that helps, Yale. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask. And I can always hop on a Zoom with you and show you the back end of Zoom and how you would add that on or the different features there as well. Lindsay, I see, has her hand raised.
Was that an accident from earlier before when I asked people, or is that new?
I did clear those. So Lindsay, let us know in chat if you want me to give you permission to speak, because I don't want to allow you to talk if you're not ready to talk. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? And something else that Jess has done, she's done this in person, but she's also done it in virtual, which is really cool to do, is like one of your icebreakers when people are getting on, what's your favorite music? Who's your favorite artist? And then make a Spotify playlist with all those artists. So maybe it's the first day of like a week-long class and, you know, people say, I like the Beach Boys and I like, you know, Lady Gaga. And then you have a bit of a variety. Put those all on your Spotify list, put it on shuffle. And it's pretty cool when people realize, hey, that's the song that I mentioned. And it brings another level to being personal. So Nicole, that might be a good option for you because you can utilize that on your pre and breaks as well. Matching music to the topics. Yes, that is always huge. That's why I love Zoom. Those who use Zoom, you may not know this, but if you want the audio of your computer to be heard, so if you have a video or if you're playing a music in the background, when you hit share screen, make sure you hit the option at the bottom for share computer sound. Otherwise, it's not going to be picking up that audio. So that's a helpful trick. And I have personally noticed with GoToWebinar, so if you're kind of between platforms, GoToWebinar in the practice we've done does not allow you to share your computer sound. So it's actually not a great platform to use if your videos are built into your slides already. So those are kind of the little nuances between each to check when you're picking what's best for you.
WebEx just recently launched the breakout room set option, and the emoji options. I have a client that uses WebEx, and they were pretty excited to know that because we've done a couple workshops on Zoom, but their platform was WebEx. So when they were hosting, they weren't able to have those capabilities, and now they do. So I think we'll continue to see updates and new installs, and I'm excited because we need this.
And Nicole just said you can and GoToWebinar. So thank you. That is great to know. And actually, Jess, you brought up virtual backgrounds before. Zoom also just added another cool feature, which are the filters. So this is another way that you can get creative about what people can see and play with and bring a little bit of fun. Oh, yeah, it's showing for you. All right. Well, again, if anybody is interested in chatting with Claudia to learn more about how we can help you with your internal culture, go ahead and let us know. We'll be sending out a email within the next day. Jess is back on stage again with a crowd of people. I love it. Miss those days.
I know.
We will be back there soon for sure, but we'll be sending out a copy of the recording as well as the slide handout by end of day tomorrow for you all, so you can share this with your team or any friends or family that you feel could benefit. Thank you, Jess, so much. This is great, and I hope that you all put these things into action, and as you use them, we'd love to hear about them and how they helped you out.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks everybody. Have a great week. Bye.